ladies and gentlemen, welcome into another edition of Soccer Tejas. And today, edition number 2 of the Soccer Tejas podcast. I'm Alex Parra. It's always a pleasure and an honor to be part of your day, your night, wherever, and whenever you might be watching the soccer podcast. But enough about me. As you can tell on screen, it's not too pleasant, but I am going to bring in my co-host for today, two amazing individuals that know the sport, that have followed it, and trust me, their opinion, at least in my opinion, certainly carries weight. We welcome in, and you can see on screen, I'll say ladies first, why not? Laura Gomez. First of all, Laura, great to see you.
Thank you.
Welcome in.
Same.
How are you?
Same. Good. How about you guys? How's the day treating you?
The day so far, so good. Now that we're together, Laura, I can tell you that.
It makes us stronger and better.
I certainly think so. Also, you can see on screen Mr. Victor Araiza. Victor, good day, good evening. How are you?
Hi, Alex. Hi, Laura. It's finally able to get this all set up. No, have all three of us now. So I'm sure make for some entertaining talk. But sunny in Houston, I think we have a lot certainly to discuss as far as soccer. But always a pleasure to be here with you guys.
Well, let's start with the point of these podcasts. You, Victor and I, you, Laura and Victor have known each other for many, many years. We've been blessed to cover the sport. I call it our sport because at times we maybe even haven't been compensated for covering the sport. Laura, maybe we'll start with that. Where are we when it comes to our sport, soccer in Houston, in Texas? And you can take that wherever you want, at the college level, at the pro level, maybe just at the coverage level. It's football season, yeah. American football season, and that, American football is still king.
Yeah, I mean, I think that those Saturday Night Live lights are still very, going strong for football. But I think soccer has made its strides. I do think that there's still more coverage that needs to be done. I think that media needs to invest more into soccer. And I've seen kind of little glimpse of hope because I know that, there's going to be a lot of cities in Texas that are going to do the World Cup. So there's a lot of more English media kind of taking an interest in soccer, which has really been the realm of Spanish media. So I would really want to see more English media taking an interest, a true interest to it, and really getting to know also the fan base of it so they can give better information, which is something that the fans, at least here in Houston, have always been begging for more.
Victor, I agree with that. Traditionally, the sport of soccer has been covered more by Spanish language media. And you and I have talked about how in the past, the mainstream media, which, by the way, has changed in our city, English language, soccer wasn't even on the radar. And at times, even now, and we'll talk about the Dynamo shortly, with the Dynamo making the playoffs, it's still a chore to get people out to cover, Victor.
It's just still tricky, right? The situation where there's no doubt, at least the three major cities, the entire state of Texas, it breeds and it lives the sport of soccer. I would extend that all over the United States, but keeping it here locally. So I think the sport is there, the passion is there, the knowledge is there. I think, again, people play it every week, grow up with it, have their favorite teams in many different leagues. But you're right, for some reason in the mainstream media, it's not reflected. Even up in Austin, for example, where the fans are clamoring for a coaching change, there's not really any criticism, I think, from the local media outlets to really dive into why are people aren't happy with Josh Wolf? What is the situation at Austin FC? Would a different coach make a difference? I think those are the little things, the analysis, the deep analysis, and more opinion, I think, more voices. It's really what's missing.
So we'll talk about that. And why don't we kick off, and we'll get back to the MLS and back to that piece of it. But why don't we start, Victor, with precisely that? What's going on with the Dynamo? It's a team that has made the playoffs, although they just lost in Seattle. Victor, how do you see Ben Olsen's team going into their second straight year of playoffs?
Well, it is a good roster they put together. And look, I give credit where credit is due up to a certain point. I think it's a team that does prioritize defense, right? They made it to the playoffs for a second straight year. I will say it is a low bar that they've, that has been here, set here for years in Houston. But at the end of the day, they're there. And, we can go into how mediocre the MLS playoff system is. In the end, we'll see where they end up in the Western Conference. It is you know, a roller coaster in the sense of, last week people were telling me, hey, they're so many points away from second place. They go up there, they lose to Seattle. Now they're not as close to second place, right? So, let's wait for some of this to unfold. But at least for now, it looks like the Dynamo will be the only Texas team, if there is another. FC Dallas and Austin are struggling. And actually, it is FC Dallas losing that gets the Dynamo into the playoffs. As well for Seattle. Both of those teams played over the weekend. So we'll see. I still have my doubts about whether they can truly contend for an MLS Cup. And I think that's kind of where they are a little bit in that purgatory of, are they a contender? I know people want to believe it because they got to the Western Conference final, but I do think they still got to prove it.
Laura, you've heard from the man Victor Araiza, who's covered the Houston Dynamo for many, many years. I tend to be a little bit more optimistic in the sense of 2 years in a row compared to a decade previously of, I'm going to use this word, disappointment.
I said the bar was low.
of disappointment, Laura. How do you see Ben Olsen's chances? They're aiming high. They want an MLS championship.
I mean, honestly, I would say I agree more with Victor. I think that, yeah, there's been improvement. I mean, I've covered a lot of games with Victor myself for many, many years. In the recent years is, obviously when covering more the Dash, but that's another crisis. But the Dynamo is on the right track, I think, to getting better, but I do agree that there's still a very defensive team. Sometimes, honestly, it's not that much fun to sit there and watch, the entire game, especially if the other team is also doing something similar. It kind of misses some kind of spice. It misses something. It has gotten better. I do want to get on the the bandwagon of saying, yay, they're going to be winners. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be great. But I think that some fans are very easily content, I want to say, because if this was happening somewhere else, the fans, I don't think, would be as content or as happy. So I think that also is a level of kind of what you ask the team of also, and what you make them, the bar also, like Victor said, the bar is kind of low. So it's kind of saying, yeah, you're doing amazing, but at the same time, yeah, you're doing amazing, but it's still not at the level it should be.
Victor, this past week, Ben Olsen wrote an open letter to fans. I really interpreted that different ways, as in, hey, we're headed to the playoffs, get on our bandwagon. The other way to interpret that is, hey, guys, we're here. By the way, don't forget about us. By the way, we're winning. By the way, please come out and support. I don't want to use words yet of desperation. I guess I just did. But is the timing of that necessary? Should it just speak for itself? Will fans fill the shell or follow the team in the playoff run, Victor, just because they're winning? Or do we have to announce it? Does it have to be announced? Because in the sports calendar, with the Astros doing well, with the Rockets about to begin, with the Texans playing, and the NFL always does well, it gets lost, correct?
And it may get more lost if the WNBA and the NHL can make it to town as well. So, and of course, we're failing to mention even more other options. But going back to your question, Alex, it's a good gesture. I think it's things you want to see, right? They should be, how do you call them? Givens, right? Like automatic requirements, little things like that. But I think it's almost a moot point to think that a letter is going to be the only thing that's going to fix it, that's going to all of a sudden rally everybody, right? It has to be part of a larger, comprehensive marketing plan, gets people out, that fills up that stadium, that builds what the Dynamo are over the course of the year, I think, not just at the last minute here when you're getting into the playoff stretch. So for me, it's still frustrating to see this team because I know what it can be. I see them getting some good results, but still not building on it, still missing opportunities, and honestly, still just doing enough to get by.
Laura, do you agree with that? The team is getting by, no. but they're winning. Is this the moment? Are some of us being a little too pessimistic?
No, yeah, I mean, Victor's always going to be the pessimistic one. I mean, that's a given. I mean, there's no changing him. But I kind of applaud, what Elson did, because I think that it's something that hasn't been done in the way he did it. So I think maybe it's like yeah, you might say, oh, it's desperate, or he doesn't need to do that, or he's just doing it now. Why didn't he do it before? But I think it's important because it also says, hey, we care. We want the stadium to be full. And, when you speak to a lot of people that follow soccer here in Houston, they're like, oh, the Dynamo's winning. They're in the playoffs, because I heard a lot of people the past few days kind of say like, oh, they're still here. So it's kind of like the rhetoric of like the Dynamo hasn't been doing well. They're not fun to watch, blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera. And now that they're like, oh, they're in playoffs, it does get more people interested, because people want to see winning teams. It is what it is, because the same thing happened to the Astros. Again, it's like the example we give over and over. And, now you go and like it's packed. And before, when, how many years ago that they had a lot of games that they were losing, nobody was there.
Yeah, but Dynamo aren't packing stadiums, and they supposedly won. I hear, oh, U.S. Open Cup champions. Oh, they made the playoffs, the Western Conference Final. Where are the people at the stadium?
Well, that's what I'm saying. There has to be, and I agree with I agree with what you're saying, that there's a disconnection and more needs to be done. I agree with it. Yes, for sure. But I do think that this is a way of kind of like saying, hey, we're here. It might be something little, it might be something too little, too late for the season, whatever. But for me, it's still kind of saying we are interested of people coming here and knowing, kind of admitting that there's not a lot of people going to the stadium.
We are here on the Soccer Tejas podcast. Alex Parra, Victor Araiza, Laura Gomez, talking a little bit about the MLS here to start off. And the last piece of it, I think, will be Hector Herrera. The what he has done or not done, Victor, and I'll start with you. He's coming up on a renewal at the end of the season, whether or not he will come back or not. We actually asked this of Ben Olsen. You asked this of Ben Olsen. And the answer was, well, we don't really know. It was not a yes, we're pursuing this and it's going to be the future of our franchise. Could this be Hector Herrera's last season, last hurrah, last opportunity in this city? Victor, I'll start with you.
It's to be seen. I wouldn't. I think it leans him staying, but nothing's for certain. And you wonder what's going to happen in some of those talks, right? You think, and maybe they're just waiting on some final details, but he's coming off an injury now. I'm sure the Dynamo have some concerns about that. In the end, again, what does it all mean in the bigger scope of things? Do they see him as a big piece of what they're doing? I think that's, granted that he's getting older, but this is a different team without Hector Herrera. Their entire attack almost depends on Hector Herrera being there on the field to sort of be the disruptor and or call the audibles on the field. And again, to be seen off the field, I don't even want to get into that side of it, but I still think they're not making the most of having him. How many years you wanted something to work with, a Mexican national team player? And I am a little disheartened, and I know it's not all on him, but when I see Dennis Buanga, speaking English over in LAFC, Cucho Hernandez, stars of this league, speaking English,
sure,
trying to connect with the audience, the primary spoken language in each city, and I see it here. I know it also maybe has to be asked of the players a little bit more. But that's where I'd like to see some more initiative as well to connect and get that stadium. It's easy when the cameras come to you at your training ground, at your stadium, to say, hey, guys, please come see us. It's easy to put something out on your own social media. Go out into the community. Open the door. Get out of your building and get out there in the city of Houston. And that's how you win people over.
Laura, off the field, beyond what he can do or can't do, whether or not he will be healthy or not, from the point of view of marketing, this was supposed to be a home run, to use that cliche. This was supposed to be a golazo. Victor brings up some points. There are still many people in the city who don't know who he is and certainly don't know he's the face, as far as I know, of this franchise. Fair?
Yeah, and I agree with what Victor said. And it's something that we've mentioned before. Yes, he's a big name, but honestly, there's bigger names out there that are more internationally known. So you have to work with what you have. And I mean, and I don't want to take anything that he's accomplished in his career because he's done great. I mean, he's a player that obviously is a game changer, disruptor, like Victor just mentioned. But perhaps when you're looking at those occasional fans of soccer, his name isn't as big. So you have to work a little harder. It's like when you brought, Eric El Cubo Torres. I mean, he was so new. He was known a lot with, a lot of the Mexican Chiva fans or the Mexican League fans when he was in LA with Chivas USA. But a lot of people that were just kind of regular fans really didn't know who he was. But then you have other teams bringing names like, Zlatan or even Chicharito. And those names are a little bit more in the international ambience. So it does open the door to kind of like do a home run. But you're going to have to work a little bit harder than bringing Zlatan. Zlatan could have wakes up and says hi and everybody a million likes. So you just have to work a little bit harder with the strategy. And like Victor said, more connecting with the community and trying to not only with the Latino community, but also with the other rest of the community. That's the soccer community in itself.
The soccer community, an international community, a diverse community that we have in the city of Houston. Let's switch gears here. I know we want to get to a lot here in this Soccer Tejas podcast. Let's talk about the other professional soccer team in town, the Houston Dash. Victor, you and I had the opportunity to call the last recent match at home against Seattle Reign, and it seemed like, well, first of all, a golazo. To win the game 1-0. That was amazing, and we relived that a lot. But it was like a playoff celebration. That might have been the highlight for the team this season, Victor. Do you agree?
It's one of the highlights, yeah. I mean, there's still a couple games to go, right? But certainly, Yuki Nagasato saved that game because otherwise it would have been a 0-0 draw. Scored in this last game, too. They just went over to Orlando. I don't think anybody was expecting them to garner a big result there. But again, it's Nagasato, responding for the team. And I know they got bigger problems, and it's not, focusing maybe on that one goal or a couple of goals isn't, what we're going to probably take out of this Dash season. But at least there's some life in the team right at the end of this season.
Laura, without a doubt, it's an important victory that they were able to obtain against Seattle Reign, a golazo, really a moment of celebration. You were there at field level, but this has really truly been a team that's been disorganized from top to bottom. I don't know how else to say that. You add injuries, you add the insecurity of what may be coming short term or long term, and I guess it's really time to think about the future, right? Getting through what's left here in October, and think about next season. I think that's just the reality this team is facing.
Yeah, I think that honestly, the Dash has unfortunately had a couple of seasons that have been upside down for the players. And I know that Victor's going to be like, well, you're being too soft on them. They're professional players, blah, blah, blah. But the mental state has to do a lot. And when you don't know if your head coach is coming or if your head coach changes, every season, that's a tough call. I mean, because players don't want to do that. They want to have some kind of stability. So I think that, that mentality of like, oh, we're rebuilding. Yeah, I understand that, but it's gotten kind of old, and that's out of the hands of the players, and that's more so of the organization heads themselves. So hopefully for this next season, because this season, honestly, I think it's done and over with. So hopefully for next season, they'll actually have a coach that at least lasts for at least 3 years to really get a good, strong foundation, then which is something that was getting done, and there were some things with the coaches and more changes, and everything just kind of crumbled to the floor.
Is that a fair criticism to ask hard questions of a WNBA team, of an NWSL team? And I know I'm probably going to get in trouble about this. Competitive sports are competitive. Professional sports are professional. The media, rightly or wrongly, with an agenda or not, often asks tough questions. It seems that in our coverage of NWSL, it's very light. I'm going to say that, Victor. It's very superficial. Asking tough questions.
That's all there is.
Asking tough questions is not. I'm going to tell you a quick story. I was on a call recently about the Dash and how they were doing, and even someone trying to get to the root of where the team was at was very polite, and this was I believe a hard-hitting journalist that eventually came out with a story that was, I think, critical of the lack of transparency. But if you ask that and you ask it that way, Laura, I'm going to go with you first. It comes across as you being a negative person. Are we to that point with our culture that we've got to, even as journalists, be very careful about what we ask? I think you can ask tough questions as long as you do it professionally and respectfully.
I think that I think the culture in itself in the United States has kind of lost a little bit of respect for the media. And they're like, well, I have boundaries. I'm a person too, and things like that, which for my style, I have been very direct and I ask questions either, politely or just a little bit stronger, but always being respectful. I think that you can be very straightforward, but respectful. My issue is that we've asked those questions. We've asked for and pointed out the lack of transparency. But so for me, when I ask those questions to the Dash, for me at this point, it's like, for what? Like the questions are not being answered. They're being kind of snowballed into something else. So if you ask, hey, what color's the sky? And they don't want to talk about the sky. They're like, hey, look, they're selling lollipops outside. So it's like, you kind of get, you don't want to be annoying at the same time, asking the same question over and over when they're giving you the same, this direction to something else.
Victor, talk about this, because this is the same organization. Ben Olsen writing a letter, asking fans to support, asking fans to be there, giving a manifesto, if you will, of where they are, a State of the Union. And the Dash, at this point, even internally, not clarifying with some players what the path looks like. I know it's two different situations, two teams that are going through different moments.
But there's a lot of things that carry over. For example,
they're one team.
Ben Olsen will write that letter, but they won't go deep into injuries, right? They won't, and everybody will have whatever. There's little things like that, right? There is a lack of transparency to certain things. There is a lack of just being open, of trying to have it be a two-way street between the organization and the general public. And I think what people sort of miss is the media. We're supposed to be a sort of an intermediary between both of those. We're neither on this side or that side. We're communicators, and I think that's our job to communicate what's going on. Now, when we get into analysis and commentary, that's separate. That's opinion.
Sure.
But even then, you're supposed to try to give it sort of an expert take on what's going on. That's why, and nobody else is going to do it. I think you're right. Now it's to the point where you're just, the way everything is so sensitive. It's sometimes you don't even want to bother with it, like you said. But as a journalist, it's not just asking the hard questions. It's getting answers and continuing to knock on doors until you get an answer. What's been going on with the head coach of the Houston Dash? Nobody seems to give anything. Not even a statement. You can't say, listen, whatever it is, let's say he has a medical problem, right? Because we heard illness at the beginning of this thing. Our head coach, is on medical leave. That's all we can share on that situation. But he will be gone for the remainder of the season, and be transparent that way. They don't even do that and so when you talk about respect, right? I get it. What you're talking about more is as media, you don't want to be impolite, but because respect, I'm gonna tell you right now, because this is the way I feel. They don't respect us as journalists. They don't respect us in media when they don't feel the need to give us an answer. They don't respect the public when they don't feel the need to give them a straight answer and just, string them along and, it's season ticket renewal time, right? Or, once something goes wrong and it goes public, or, they get, told on social media, that's when they start answering phones, those kind of things. So that's why I get heated about this, because, and you're right. They'll point at me and say, I'm the bad guy. I'm the one that's just, ruffling feathers and just shaking down trees and just causing a ruckus. And
you
I
are.
have a vendetta. But you know what? If you don't do it, then who else is going to do it? At this point, where we are in Houston, Texas, the World Cup is coming in less than 2 years. What are these teams doing anything to advance the sport? Not just there, everywhere. That's why I get heated about it, because it is my town. I was born and bred here. I follow the team, both teams, since they started. I've spent money on these teams. I've been there with the season ticket holders. I've been there on the road trips. Nobody in that building is going to tell me something I don't know. and just repackages that. I don't want to get here into other words, but
Your
that's the
passion,
situation.
your
That's the
passion.
situation.
Yeah, look,
People deserve transparency, and when you're trying to do the opposite, that's when I'll step in and I'll say something, because I think people deserve to have answers. And I keep saying it. Some people may be happy and they're gonna comment. They're gonna comment back. That's great. Every empty season, every empty seat in that building represents somebody that's not there for a reason.
yeah, Victor, the danger of this to me is out of sight, out of mind, and starting to rebuild can take time and time and time. We got to keep moving.
It's a crutch now.
It is.
It's a crutch.
It is. So we'll call what we are doing next some quick hits, some quick kicks, if you will, about a couple of different subjects. Let's stay with the women's game, but go to the university side, the college side. This week, we saw the playing of Texas A&M versus Texas Victor on the soccer pitch, something that continues to grow. We know that now, beyond what happens on the American football pitch, watching these women's soccer teams play is amazing. The level of soccer, I've been blessed to cover now a couple of seasons of Big 12 soccer. The level keeps getting better, and so is the support, Victor. I love watching that quality of level. In this case, Texas against Texas A&M.
And the rivalry's back, and that rivalry is going to bring people to the game just because of it being Texas versus Texas A&M. We'll see if that jumpstarts maybe a rivalry for the national championship. Because I have to say, I think Texas UT soccer has been, sitting on their laurels for a long, long time. I get it; they got the big resources because they're with UT. But I think that's a program that should be challenging for the title every year, and I don't know if they're living up to it.
Laura, from a point of view of the youth and the chain of leading up to playing at Div 1 soccer in either SEC or a Big 12 school, for instance, the pathway's there. I'm glad to see more Latinas participating, number one, but those opportunities are there, and so is the coverage now, something that maybe didn't exist a few years ago.
No, yeah, and I definitely feel like there's more paths and more opportunities now, perhaps, than maybe when I was playing, when I was playing in high school, to see the path and that you can actually make a living out of it. So I think that in general, the ambient for women in soccer has grown, and it kind of has trickled down from like the professionals to the semi-professionals and down forth like that. So it does kind of give more players the want to continue to play in college and maybe look forward to being a pro.
Locally, we also saw a game, U of H, now part of the Big 12. They're struggling this season, Victor, but they took on Texas Tech. Texas Tech coming to town with Coach Stone, a team that has done it all, a team that consistently is getting to the NCAA tournament. How do you see U of H in the future? Not only building with Coach Frias, but I think this could be a hotbed for soccer, for women's soccer, for men's soccer in the future. I think it's early on, Victor. Is it time to press a little bit about getting results and being competitive?
Right, there is that. They're struggling, I think, right, with that transition to the Big 12. But I think we said it was going to be a raise. It would raise the level that they were at. And look, I'd rather have them getting adjusted to the Big 12 than just being the big fish in the little pond. Let's hope they can. Whatever they got to do, bring in a better recruiting class, or just get, if they got to just kind of adjust to the level of competition. But absolutely, Houston should be a hotbed for soccer. And hey, hopefully we can get a men's team too. What's holding that up?
That's a whole other conversation for the future, without a doubt. Laura, how do you see U of H soccer? Not only this season, but I think it continues to grow. Being in the Big 12 is not easy.
Well, I think that right now, again, it's another team that's going through like a transition. I mean, they've had a lot of new players kind of come in, but I think that a lot of like the settings is strong, especially with the coach Frias. I think that he's done a good job to kind of develop those players. And yeah, it's a transition with new players, but I think, again, like the culture is already there, so it might be easier for players to come in and kind of get adjusted to that. Then coaches and players get adjusted to each other, so there's only one kind of transitioning there and development. So I look forward, honestly, to seeing what is shown, because I mean the last few seasons have been really good to see. I mean, I graduated from U of H, and back then, like, yeah, it wasn't a thing. So now to see the advances in is amazing.
Yeah, it was back then, because that was a long time ago, by the way.
A long time ago.
I'm messing
with you. A
long
time ago.
Look, I'm a graduate of U of H, and Victor, one of the stories we'll cover here on Soccer Tejas is how is it that in Houston, in 2024, we don't have a men's soccer team at the University of Houston. It's a shame. I've reached out to many athletic directors in the past who, by the way, are completely out of touch with our community, and the excuses they make up, Victor, are insane. And, I'm to the point also where I think this has to be talked about. And I know we have a new athletic director. I know we have people that want to grow our U of H. This is a no-brainer, and you have to fight for it. And if you don't do it, I think it goes beyond, and I'm going to allude to something, and I think you guys know what I'm alluding to. It goes beyond reason. There's got to be an agenda here from someone to prevent this sport on the men's side from growing. But I'm sure I'm going to get in trouble with that. Well, let's finish up with what we call one of our top 10s. And in this case, guys, we're going to talk about the top 10 teams in the state of Texas. So I'm going to read them down here for this week. We're ranking, by the way, U of H as the number 10 team, women's soccer team in the state of Texas. That's number 10. Number 9 is the University of Lamar out in Beaumont. Number 8, we have SFA on the list, team doing well. One of their neighbors and rivals at times, Sam Houston, coming in at number 7. Number 6, Rice, the University of Rice, who have done really well as of late. It's a team that continues to improve. Number 5, now we're talking about the bigger schools, of course, Baylor. Number 4, Texas A&M. Number 3 in our top 10 women's soccer teams, TCU. Number 2 in the Soccer Tejas list, Texas Tech, who just beat the University of Houston 2-0. And the number 1 team is the team from Austin, the Texas Longhorns. Guys, what do you think of those rankings? I'll go with you first, Laura. You like them?
I would agree with most of them, but I wouldn't have put Houston at number 10. I would have maybe put them at 8. I want to say, I'm looking at the list here.
Okay.
I would say 8. I think that's the only one that I would kind of, as of right now, because it's the week of September. So we want to point that out. Not that, rankings in total, but just the week of. But I would have put them a little bit. I know they didn't win, but I would have not put them at 10.
Okay, so you're being kind of nice to them. Victor, what do you think of our list of the top 10 teams?
I'll agree with it. Obviously, still a lot of season to be played. So, you got UT up top. I still think they need to be, challenged a little more, like I said, in that national stage. Maybe TCU is the only one just for recent history. But if we're going on this season's result, then I think it's probably right.
So there you have it. Then our first top 10 list here on the Soccer Tejas podcast. So we've got to go, and we also want you in the future to be part of this. Send us your comments, send us your questions. Do you agree or disagree with us? Look, I certainly don't pretend to know it all. Victor's the only one that does that, by the way. And I'm joking. Look, these are good conversations. I know, ladies and gentlemen, friends that follow us, this is emotional to many of us because we have invested in the sport at many levels for many years. So let's close up. Any last words for this podcast? I'll start with you, Victor.
No. Follow, comment, give us feedback, even if you don't agree. I always welcome all of it. We're not always going to agree, like you said. But at the very least, I think take away from it this: we're trying to advance the sport here in the great state of Texas, the Lone Star State. So that's what Soccer Tech is all about.
Excellent. Victor, thank you so much. Laura, any words to close out today?
Yeah, I just want to say support soccer. Honestly, there's a lot of teams, semi-pro teams, women's soccer teams as well that we can go out there and make a lot of dreams come true and support local soccer.
Dreams coming true. Trust me, this podcast has taken us a little while, but it is a dream that is coming true. So on behalf of Victor, on behalf of Laura, I'm Alex Parra. Thanks to all of you that follow us, friends, on this latest edition of the Soccer Tejas podcast. Until next time.